All right, let's dive in a little deeper on MicroStrategy and its relationship to Bitcoin. This is an interesting one because there are some money moves happening that I think are very interesting here, both that will affect Bitcoin and that could affect and will affect MicroStrategy. Of course, that's Michael Saylor. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Today, we're going to dive into the component of where MicroStrategy is in terms of how they're moving in the marketplace and how closely, because of their percentage of Bitcoin ownership, how closely they track to Bitcoin and why some of these big institutional investors are very critical in terms of the strategy that you need to be watching out for both on Bitcoin and also on MicroStrategy if you're buying MicroStrategy stock. I want to jump over to a story by Decrypt. If you guys have not followed them, just go to decrypt.co. It's a great site. Unbelievable research, and I like a lot of the the journalists over there. Matthew DeSalvo is the one that cut this one. But basically, it's a Capital Group division buys 12% stake in Bitcoin-heavy MicroStrategy. And I want to jump down to some of the details on this. Capital International Investors Division of LA, Capital Group, they got the 12% stake. SEC filing last month, according to their filing, 953,000 shares, basically $561 million at today's rate. This means that Capital Group is one of the biggest investment organizations in the world, first of all, and they now have an indirect exposure in a big way to Bitcoin. So when you look at Capital Group, they are as close to vanilla investing as you can get. For them to make this kind of move is a huge, huge positive opportunity, I think, that's both supports, because listen, I understand MicroStrategy's core business, software development, the data opportunities that they represent as a company, and it's a big business, but it's not near as much as where they're going in terms of their treasury, in terms of the amount of Bitcoin that they own. Michael Saylor-led firm has hovered up to 105,085 Bitcoins worth $3.4 billion at today's prices. Now, you have to remember, Michael Saylor was not in Bitcoin very long ago. He moved into Bitcoin in the last year and a half. So this movement, and also this movement of where MicroStrategy is, when you look at where they came from and the growth of their stock, and I'll show you some of that, it is absolutely insane of where this is going. So it's maybe, you would think, all right, well, Paul, that's great, but that's just one investment house, and it's, of course, there's a variety of others that probably play in this space. I want you to understand how far and where this goes, because you go back to this story. Company has since purchased loads of Bitcoin. Michael Saylor regularly preaches, obviously, we know, we've had him on this show, unbelievable mind in terms of understanding how debt ratios work, how business works in general, and how this potential megaphone and evolution of Bitcoin will be and have an effect on the monetary system we know as the US dollar, and also just in the reserve currency scenario. But look who's right here. Someone else owns it. And right now, only BlackRock, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, has more MicroStrategy shares than Capital that we just bought 12%. They're sitting at 14%. These two investment houses own 26.5%, 27% of MicroStrategy. So if MicroStrategy takes a hit, that's a real problem for both these investment facilities. And for them to be going into that is pretty amazing. And I think that the scenario that we're dealing with is going to be one that is one we've got to just keep watching. It just is, these kind of moves are really serious. And also, they have kind of this approach toward, is this a strategy to one, and this is the FUD scenario that people are looking at, is this a strategy to one, take Bitcoin down a little bit lower, or is it a look at maybe we're positioning right now at the bottom because we're getting ready to see something happen? So I want to kind of go with that because there's two different scenarios here. If you go to this story right here on CoinDesk, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, seeing very little demand for crypto lately. All right, this is just recently done. Here's basically what he said on basically a CNBC interview. You can kind of see it. This was just this week on Wednesday. He's not seeing much demand for the digital asset. He had previously said that Bitcoin has caught the attention of many people and that the cryptocurrency market is still relatively small. Obviously, if we could improve financial literacy, it could help more in terms of the focus, not just on speculating markets and the ups and downs, but translating that into investing in the long run, which I think is just in general BlackRock's approach toward investing. And that's the thing that I think is interesting. For BlackRock to have 14% of MicroStrategy, which is a heavily vested company into Bitcoin at $3.4 billion, then they obviously understand where this is going, because Bitcoin is so tied to MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor that if one moves, the other moves. And it's usually if Bitcoin is moving, MicroStrategy is moving right along with it. And I want to show you a chart. But here's the point. Is BlackRock, is Capital, are they in a position now where they're saying, hey, listen, we've hit the bottom. Bitcoin is down at the floor. This is our acquisition. And not only are we leveraging and hedging our bets on things like MicroStrategy, but also within our investment portfolios, because remember that we can't do anything direct with Bitcoin. So the next best thing is to invest in companies like MicroStrategy, who have a very clear tether to where Bitcoin is going. I want to jump over to TradingView and just take a quick look at where Bitcoin and MicroStrategy is going. The orange line is Bitcoin. Obviously, the stock candles you see there is MicroStrategy, and we'll talk about the sentiment here in a second, but just how closely Bitcoin is going. The only difference is this right here, this departure. Now, why did this happen where the departure occurred? You all know it as well as I. Michael Saylor doubled down on Bitcoin in a big, big way. When you look at this departure back on June 8th, right here is where it started to move. And Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy started to move up with it, along with his announcement that they were going to continue to leverage the company to be able to get more Bitcoin. So essentially, they're selling more stock in their company to be able to go out and actually do more Bitcoin acquisition because of the price point back in June 8th. Just jump back in this chart. Right here, Bitcoin is running right in there, almost 40% down at that time. And you look at the track that we've got here, and I want to kind of just go back a little bit in time. You can kind of see the differences of where this flows with MicroStrategy. As MicroStrategy gets more invested in Bitcoin, that starts to tighten up. And when they do this thing that they're talking about right now, which is investing more in Bitcoin, guess what happens? They start to climb. Bitcoin is in the prime position. So I feel like this is a big, big indicator for Bitcoin moving forward. And I want to kind of move here on where I think the price target is going to go, because this is going to be very interesting on the future of MicroStrategy. So we measured this point right here to here, which basically was a little bit of a fall off on MicroStrategy. This was back in June 18th through June 22nd. Sentiment held at 61.54. Their amplification number was through the roof at 86.33. Here's the amplification that was registered. You can see the growth right here in the stock. And then now we're measuring this current move right here on sentiment at 63.14. Up again, amplification down slightly. So that tells me that, the movement is a little bit more benign in the sense that people are saying, okay, well, what's next has Michael Saylor basically put his major next move in action, and is he positioning now for Bitcoin to essentially jump to the next level? If Bitcoin starts its rise, this will have an immediate effect in valuation of MicroStrategy as a company, which could put the price target, and a lot of people are talking about double by year end, where, of course, where they're trading. So I think that's the scenario when you look at a price target of in the range of 820, which they're trading in the mid fives right now. Many people are looking at this. Could this be the play that moves MicroStrategy to, by year end, at double that, meaning $1,000 stock price, which would move them into essentially one of the most valuable companies out there in the technology space, all based on this investment move by Capital Investment and, of course, by BlackRock. BlackRock and Capital both now have a major play on where this is going. Bitcoin is tracking directly along with it. Michael Saylor's conviction towards Bitcoin and what they're doing as a strategy, all of this is a perfect storm that is culminating at a point in time, which is really right here in July and August, of when we think we're going to see the breakout for Bitcoin. And when that occurs, if you're in the stock game, this is one of those that kind of jumps into it. Now, I want to just remember, we do these market movers from time to time. The key here with market movers is we collect all this data, do some research, drop in some data analysis, and we provide you basically opinion and a review of what we think is going to happen from our side of things. But for you, it's not investment advice. You've got to go out there and do your own research. Hopefully this is going to get you going in the right direction to really follow this closely. And if anything, it just makes you perk up your ears and pay attention to these kind of money moves that are happening, because this is a big deal. These kinds of strategic money moves happen when the market is at its most boring, which is right now. Right now, when the market is at its most boring, Bitcoin is going sideways, all kind of a chop model out there from my friend over at Digital Asset News. Rob is always talking about this. This is the time for acquisition. This is the time for accumulation. And it's the time for developing your strategy as we start to see this go up. We're going to do some videos on this, on what are the best ways to take profits, what are the best ways to basically take advantage of this next bull run, because this is going to be a big, this next bull run, the end of this bull run. This is going to be something that you really need to pay very close attention to, because we are going to see this move. We are going to see an all-time high surpassed for Bitcoin. And if you look at, Alec Mashinsky, many pundits looking at the 100K, which is still our number at the $100,000 mark, I do think that's where the top is probably going to float in. If it does go beyond that, it's going to be a FOMO kind of scenario that continues to drive. But we are going to have a video on how to take profits, how to do some trading, and basically your strategy on moving your market as the market moves itself and getting position in there. And that goes for altcoins, because altcoins will tag along on this rise. And I think, again, it goes back to what's happening over at MicroStrategy. It goes back to the investors that are moving in these spaces outside of Bitcoin itself, because they are already tied so closely to Bitcoin. So this is going to be a big topic to watch. Make sure and stay tuned right here on TechPath for that. Of course, if you're over on the podcast, hit us up. We love to get your input, and it's a great way for us to kind of understand what you're looking for. Give us some stars over there. If you're here on YouTube, just subscribe right now. I leave my DMs open for you guys. You can always hit me up on Twitter, @Paul Barron. I'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.